right, welcome to this week's episode of the Melanin Muses Podcast, where we will talk about breaking the mold on Asian stereotypes, changing your outlook of how you see yourself, and changing how you treat others with our guest muse, Laarni Mulvey. Laarni is the founder of the Strong and Mighty Company and of the Standing in Strength Global Movement. She is known to many as the Power Lady, not only due to her signature power bun and the strength sport she partakes in, but it's also because of her belief that strength is universal and she's able to find strength in all aspects of life. Utilizing her arsenal of gifts, Laarni encourages and leads women to honor their power through her message of strength. Her primary belief is that when you believe in your own strength, you can positively impact others around you, overcome feelings of being held back, and outgrow the standards that are imposed on you. With that said, let's get started. Laarni!
Hello. I always forget what I wrote in my intro, and then when other people read it, I was just like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I know, it sounds so amazing, right? Because you're just so fabulous and just amazing and strength and strong and woo. So I know I gave you a little biography and intro for our audiences, but can you just tell us about yourself in your own words, ma'am?
I am Laarni Mulvey again, the Power Lady. I don't have my signature bun like my intro says, because when I go on a shows, especially with my friend Nikki here, I want to make sure I look fabulous. So but yes, I'm here out in the Chicagoland area. I am an immigrant. I moved to the US when I was 5 years old and have lived in this area ever since and have gone through lots of changes in my life. I am 46 years old, gone through a lot of changes and a lot of experiences in my life, which have led me to being a strength athlete. Because eventually my biggest goal as a young kid was to be an athlete, and I could not do it. I did not have the opportunity as a young kid. So I'm here as a strength athlete now.
Hey, that was a good, in your face now I can be an athlete, even though y'all said I could be an athlete. So hot. I love that. And you said that, wait, you came to America at 5 years old. Where were you at beforehand?
So I was born in the Philippines. And what happened with my family, as what I can recall, is it was just one day they were like, we're going to the US, pack your shit, let's go. And ended up here in the Chicagoland area.
Oh, do you remember much of your life in the Philippines at all, or?
Bits and pieces. And I remember the house I lived in, but I also remember being one of those kids that ran around everywhere. And I think that's where that athlete side of me has always been ingrained in me, that I just, movement and doing physical things and being outside was always something that I have had in me. And it's funny because it only took moving to the US for all that to change. And when I remember when I was a young kid, I don't know how old I was, but there was this steel bar that connected the railing to a post, and I thought I was a gymnast, and I decided to do a flip on this little railing thing, and I busted my chin open.
Oh my God.
But it's to me, growing up, being active was always a part of me. Everything changed when I moved to the States. And when I moved to the States, the first thing I learned from my grandmother was, hey, you're in America now, you speak English. So I don't even know how to speak my own language. But if I hear it, I can understand it, but I can't speak it. And it's just a lot of the changes within me happened starting as soon as we stepped into the US.
Oh, wow. And what dialect do you guys speak? Or at least does your family still speak the native language? Or what's it called for those of us who aren't quite familiar with the different dialects?
So main language in the Philippines is Tagalog. And it's funny because my parents are two different dialects.
Oh.
So my mom was from a different province. My dad was from Manila. So it's the language, the dialects were different, but they spoke the same language, main language. And that's the language that I know because I was born in Manila. And it was an interesting conversation when I'm with my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family, because they could be speaking the same conversation, but the dialects are totally different. And they don't understand each other. That's the funny they'll have a conversation about the same thing, but have to switch on and off between the dialects to make sure that they're understanding understanding each other.
Oh, yeah, that sounds familiar. Because when I was in Korea, there's like the Busan dialect and the Seoul dialect, and then there's the Ulsan dialect. So you can hear like the differences in the intonation. Because when you first learn the language, you learn the basic one that's kind of like the most well-known. But then once you get out to like the countrysides and the more like isolated non-city areas, then you start hearing the differences. And it was wild. I'm like, wait, what are you saying? I know you're speaking Korean, but why don't I understand you? Like, so yeah, I can understand what you're saying. But no, that's awesome. Like, I definitely understand the concept of like hearing the different dialects and just trying to figure out, okay, what's going on, even like I was saying the same thing. And what was that like for you culturally growing up? Since you mentioned prior that your grandma was like, hey, you're an American now, only speak English. How did it affect you as someone from the Philippines culturally? And how has that influenced your life?
So honestly, I was telling this to my sister the other day. I feel very disconnected to my culture. I'm learning it as a 46-year-old woman now, living in the US for over 40 years. It's like I'm just slowly learning my culture again, because it was a little not erased, but it was very suppressed in me growing up, especially it as a young kid. Knowing what I love to do was movement and being being active, and coming to the US and that having to be shut off. Is it because of now I'm in a new country, I have to make sure I assimilate into the new country so people don't see the Asian in me? You are just part of the people, the American people. Or is it because we don't, as an Asian people, like we're told to almost make ourselves super small so nobody sees us? Because, just put your head down, do your work, and you will be successful in life. You don't enjoy the extracurriculars, because in America, you do extracurricular stuff, you don't get success. Because as an Asian woman growing up, it was go to school, come home, get straight A's, and go to college, be a nurse, be a doctor. Those stereotypes were ingrained in me very young. It also didn't help that my family fell into that. My grandmother, she was a head nurse. My grandfather was a doctor, but he was also a director of parasitology at the University of Chicago. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, there's a lot of high accolades in our family, and you had to really, the only way to be a good part of the family, you have to have that label as a doctor, you have to have a label as a nurse, like all those stereotypes followed me as a young kid. Athlete was not one of them. Athletes, athletics, sports, that was not part of the conversation growing up. And I mean, my aunt played volleyball, but she wasn't really allowed to. And I remember hearing her crying because my grandfather said, no, you can't play volleyball.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So being an athlete was something eventually I had to step forward into myself. And it only took 40 years to do it. but it was the best decision of my life because it taught me so much about myself, but it has taught me to accept my culture, accept the stereotypes, but not fall into them.
And yeah, I was actually about to ask, I was like, how did that affect you growing up? Like, did you always feel that lingering thoughts in the back of your mind, that lingering just desires? Like, I want to be athletic, but my culture's telling me otherwise. So it was like an inner conflict, right?
Yeah, it was the observe your parents' wishes, live up to your parents' wishes, be miserable living up to your parents' wishes, or do what you love, be who you are, know who you are, first of all. And without that knowing, for me, I actually fell into, especially in high school, I fell into that depressive state. I tried killing myself in high school like 3 times. I was a cutter in high school. I used to damage my arms all the time because I was so angry and there was no outlet for me to, I mean, I grew up in the 80s, 90s, mental health wasn't a big deal. It was like, oh, if you go to the psychologist or talk to somebody, you're crazy, whatever. But, as a high school kid, seeing everyone else coming into their own and you just can't, it was very difficult. It was really hard to know myself back then because I couldn't experience it. And it really took me until as an adult to finally face who I am and face what I want. I mean, even if it's not the right thing, at least I tried it. It's almost like trying a new food, I want to try that. I just want a little taste. Oh, I don't like it. Okay, move on to the next one. And really, like, I think that's all those tiny tastes brought me to strength sports now. I mean, I went through, I did jujitsu. I have my blue belt in jujitsu and I never went past the blue belt. And it was great. I love jujitsu. I was not very good at it. I tried it. Okay. I tried being a runner. I tried running like a marathon. I tried doing that was I really was bad at running. And then I've done like OCRs, I've done rock climbing, I've done all these things, but eventually it brought me to strength sports. And just one day in 2019, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go try powerlifting. I've seen it. I'm going to try it. I went to my gym, looked at all the personal trainers that were on the board, and this girl was this one coach. She was a competitor, a powerlifting competitor, and I was like, "That's the girl I'm going to talk to." And it was a great decision. She actually was like, "Maybe you should compete. Try competing." And loved her. She was actually in grad school, so she ended up going back to grad school and had to do her rounds. And she's like, I can't coach you anymore because I'm going to grad school. So I looked for another coach, found my coach now, and right now my new history is being made.
Oh, wow. And how do you feel that strength training affected your mental health? Because you said you came from a very like struggling mental health, even to like the self-harm and all of that. And it wasn't until recently that you were able to really find more of yourself and your peace with the strength training. So what was that process like, seeing your mind shift change the more you actually got into strength training? You found that like, oh, this is for me.
I think strength training for me ended up being more of my personal psychological support. People think like, oh, you're a strength athlete, all you do is train, all you do is lift, whatever. But there are so many lessons on the platform that transfer into life. So many lessons. When you get to a bar that you've never done a weight, you've never done anything like that before, the first thing that comes in your mind is self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And self-doubt it's like a lingering spice that comes out every once in a while.
Mm.
And once you experience what your body can do, it transfers into what can your mind do. Because really, a lot of lifting is fear because, oh my God, that's really heavy. I don't know if I could do that. But then what do you tell yourself? What story do you tell yourself? Like, do you already foreshadow that you can't do it? Or do you face it and understand that this is a feeling that you're going to feel throughout the movement? It gives you that presence of yourself. It gives you that, you get that feeling about yourself when you step on that platform and there's all these people looking at you. You just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the outcome, you have to trust in yourself. And that's what strength training has given me, like that trust in myself, trusting in my training, which goes into trusting my education, trusting my body, trusting that, yes, in the back of my mind, I know there's going to be that possibility of that no lift. But what about the possibility of a good lift? You know, we automatically go to that, oh gosh, no lift, it's going to be bad, whatever. But what about embracing the positive of it? What if you can do it? Are you going to surprise yourself? Yes, it's going to be a pleasant surprise. But trusting in yourself to do it, if you've put in the work, if you've put in the mind training to it, you know, just do it. Just let your body feel it. Just let your body understand it. Because once you know that your body is capable, you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad. You know, it's almost like going on a job interview. You get nervous in the beginning, you start talking, and I mean, really the outcome is out of your control. You know, as long as you've done your best, as long as you know you've done your best, not like that half-assed done your best. You know, once you do your best, you put in the work, and then really the outcome is out of your control.
Because it does sound like a very intense process. So you're not only building your physical strength, you're building your mental strength simultaneously. So
Yeah.
my question would be for those of our listeners who are not quite familiar with strength training, like you can hear the term, but you might not know what it specifically entails. Can you walk us through what it's like when you first start out in strength training?
Sure. So I chose powerlifting as my strength training. There are different ways to strength train. You know, people all automatically think I'm gonna like talk about powerlifting or strongman stuff, but really, strength training begins where you want it to be, where you could have your high reps, low weights kind of things, but you know, strength training is really a personal endeavor. It really is, because everyone has their own vision of what their strength training is going to be like. And I'm just talking about the physical part. The mental part is like a totally different conversation. But really, the strength training can be powerlifting. It can be just lifting weights just to get stronger. It could be own your body weight makes you stronger. So strength training can be yoga. Strength training can be all the different kinds of activities out there. Strength becomes what you want it to be. And that's I see that, you know, someone who loves to talk about strength is everywhere. You know, strength could be doing push-ups on the floor, strength could be jumping jacks, strength can be running, and I was not strong enough to run. So strength training is what you make it to be. It doesn't have to be beautiful, it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be this like butterflies and pleasant, you know. I mean, it's what you make it to be, and it's what you believe in. What is your strength that you believe in?
And how is, like, when it comes to strength training and powerlifting, like typically the average person might just think of a more masculine setting for that. So I'm curious what your experience has been like as a woman who stepped into not only the realm of athletics, but into strength training, into powerlifting specifically. So how has that affected you throughout your journey?
It's funny because people think, oh my God, I'm going to pick up something really heavy. I'm going to automatically turn manly. You know, that's your perception. And it's a very archaic perception of what strength is and what it means to be strong. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a man thing. I mean, I think I'm a lot stronger than a few men out there, but I I just see that perception. I mean, I see it as almost like a patriarchal perception, I guess. It strength is universal. The look is universal. You know, there's 120-pound women that are way stronger than me that don't look manly. And I don't think being strong does not mean automatically manly.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to change the perception of what strength is. It doesn't automatically go to men because there's a lot of strong women out there as well. So that perception is so archaic to me. It's very old school to me. And growing up, I saw the Cosmopolitan magazines and they never talked about women in strength. And I never saw a representation of who I am, who I wanted to be back in the day, because they didn't put that representation that I would ever know that I could be in any of these old school magazines or marketing ideas. So manly to me is it's just an odd word. It's just an perception. It's like, oh my God. I mean, I was on a show. I was getting interviewed by someone and they're just like, aren't you afraid you're going to be manly? I'm like, do I look manly? I don't think I look manly. I think I have great hair. That's feminine. I think I have great eyeliner. That's feminine. But you know, it's like, if that's your perception, that's your perception. I can't change it, or I can't, or I can help you see it through a different lens. But I think strength is beautiful. I think strong women are beautiful. I see strong women, you know, when I compete, and I think maybe for me, my perception is just we can do that. You know, like, look at us, like we can do this shit. It's amazing. And that word is just very, very, it's very like bland to me. It's just very one-sided.
And almost like a fear in the sense too, because I hear that a lot when it comes to women who want to exercise just to lose weight and be like that dainty stereotype that we're told about, rather than, oh, don't give me weights and stuff because I don't want to be too bulky. Or there have been men in their life who say all these negative comments about women who are actually in shape, is like, oh, well, you must be a man or stuff. And like, I've seen this negativity, especially on social media. And it's like, that just seems like you're intimidated by a woman who doesn't need to minimize herself just so you can feel good about yourself. And I'm curious, like, you've talked what it was like to be a woman in this field, and then separately of how culturally it prevented you from getting there sooner. But can we just mash that together? Like, what has it been like as specifically an Asian woman being within the strength community, especially because of the extra stereotypes surrounding women of your culture? Could you elaborate on that?
So for me, as I'm Filipino, you know, I'm an immigrant as well. When I moved to the States, it became apparent that an athlete was not something that I should be or I could be. And that stereotype that an Asian woman should be dainty, should be home taking care of the kids, should be cooking and cleaning all the time. We should be as small as possible to not ruffle any feathers. That is what I grew up as. That's what the mentality that I grew up as an Asian woman, as an Asian kid, to not put myself out there too much. You should be the docile woman. You should be the one that doesn't say anything. Take whatever is said to you. Your people are saying that to you because you deserve it. That. Don't stand up for yourself, because that means that you are you are challenging the norm. And from breaking the stereotypes started for me at an older age. Really. I mean, I should have like 5 kids right now, but I don't. Really, that stereotype as an Asian, well, you should be having babies, you should be doing this and this. And like, you know, like it's something that never was in my forefront of my mind. And call me selfish, because I will be selfish to myself now. When I was in my 20s and somebody asked me like, why don't you have any kids? I'm like, it's not important to me. It's not what I want to be, you know, just a mother. Not saying that mothering is bad, but I just don't want to do that. That's not for me. That is not for me. And as I got older, it still was not for me. Being, you know, and I got questioned about, oh, well, you know, you have a good job. You should be getting married and all that stuff. And I was like, no, I will do it when I'm ready. And that was always like one of the biggest, especially for my parents. My dad was like, I think when I was like 27, he's like, aren't you going to get married? You know, aren't you dating anybody? I'm like, no. I actually thought I was a lesbian for a while there, because I wasn't dating anybody and I wasn't bringing anybody home and to meet him. And it was always like that perception that that's something we should be doing. As an Asian woman, like, you should be getting married young, you know. And there's always that perception as well, like, why are people going to the Philippines to find their wives, you know? And I'm like, that drives me crazy, because I remember dating this dude when I was younger. And he's like, he actually told me that I was surprising to him, because I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're supposed to be like quiet and docile, you know, like that. He actually used that word. And I was like, okay. He's like, you're not like that. So that's why you intimidate me. Yep.
The fact that he said you're supposed to be.
But since I wasn't, it was intimidating to him.
Oh my God.
Crazy. And it's funny because I love this guy. He was so fun. I loved him to death. And when he said that, I was like, okay, all right, well, okay, I'll see you later. Bye.
Like, oh, major red flag. Bye. Yeah. I don't like that color. Bye.
Yeah, it's, you know, the crazy stereotypes about Asian women. It's why can't we break the mold? And that's because that's how we were taught to grow up. You know, that's how we were taught as women, that we are to be submissive to our husbands, submissive to the man, you know. And it was never me. And I think that's what got me in trouble when I was younger a lot. Because I just couldn't do it. I could not do it. And it was not me to be quiet and small.
Like, my last point for this half of the episode is, as an Asian woman, breaking the cultural barriers and the gender barriers, how has that affected you, like, mentally, being like, you know what, screw these cultural norms, screw the gender norms, I'm doing my own thing, making my own lane, therefore going to help bring others up with me. How has that been for you?
I think you said it right there, that me as an Asian woman, not having that representation as a young woman, I want to build the path for other women, whether you're Filipino or not. I Before I die, I want that path open to anyone to try strength sports. I want, doesn't matter how old you are, or doesn't matter where you're from. That's why I believe strength is universal, because it brings people together as a community, but it also defies what the perception of what women can does. Because, okay, so I did a small strength summit, and there was 3 amazing women that came and tried some of the strong man implements. And first thing out of their mouths were, "Oh, I don't think I could do that. That looks really heavy. I don't think I could do that." And I said, "Just try, see what you can. I will coach you through it. If you can't do it, just put it back down." And when they were able to lift some of these implements, they were amazed of what they can do. And that's that path I want to build. That's that path I want women to understand is, yes, build your families, everything like that. But when you get that moment to find yourself again, let's do this. Let's do this. Because I feel like a lot of women, it's something they've always wanted to challenge themselves, but didn't know how. And I want to be there to hold their hand. I want to be there in that beginning stage. You know, you can get to a coach and they're like, "Okay, lift 10 pounds, blah, blah, blah." But what about the beforehand? Because that fear of lifting is there beforehand, which I went through as well. And to have a coach to hold your hand through that beginning, I think is very special. That is where we start planting the seeds of self-belief. We start planting the seeds of erasing a little bit of those norms that you grew up as thinking you can't do. We start planting that positive energy, that positive seeds, because it not only just affects like you physically, but like your family life. You have a more positive mentality, because then you see it in your family. "Oh, well, I did this," and they're just like, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that," whatever. And you're just like, "Yep, I did. Yes, I did." And your confidence, the confidence gets built up, and it really affects, like, strength affects all sorts of your life. And that's why I want to build that path for everybody.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. And like on that note, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Go ahead.
You know, this stereotype of being docile and stuff, it prevents Asian women to tell their story.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm talking about representation, not just for women in general, but for me in general. It took me a long time to tell my story on where I have become or where I'm at now, because, oh, you know, I don't know if my parents are dead, but like, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, my story isn't good enough. You know, why would anybody hear my story? Why, you know, you question like, why is it that, you know, Asian women can't do this? You know, like maybe I should just be like that and not ruffle, you know, like it's that ingrained in me as a young kid, like part of my culture to not be big.
Yeah.
You know, and now as I've built myself up to who you're talking to today, like I want to be so big that I have to go sideways through the door. That's what I've told myself. I even told my husband that. I'm like, I want to be so big that I take up every corner of a room.
I love that. Well,
And not just
personality and physically.
exactly. I want people to feel my energy as soon as I walk into a room.
Mm.
Because
And you already do. Like,
I've been made small all my I'm only 5 foot, 5'1" if I wear my lifters. You know,
you're 5 foot?
yeah, I'm very
Me
short.
too.
Short people.
Yay.
But it's like, you know, I've been made small physically, but making myself big is up to me.
Mm.
And that's where you see me today. Making myself big meant taking down the suppressive walls that I've had around me for a long, 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 long time. And, you know, like when people build these walls around them to keep things out to protect them, what about if you like peel back just a corner and you see the possibilities out there?
Mm.
And then you peel a little bit more and you're like, whoa. And eventually, yes, you'll never tear down the whole wall, you know, ever. But once the opportunities and the experiences are there, you see them. That's how I live my life. Like I see those experiences, I see those opportunities. There are still pieces of me that are blocked, but not how I was back in the day.
Mm.
And strength sports has showed me that.
Mm.
You know,
And I love that.
sharing my story. We have so many stories we tell ourselves to hold ourselves back because of fear. But what if you tell your story? What if you tell your story and you help somebody else who has that fear overcome it? You know, like that's to me like sharing with the community, sharing with the world your story. And I think that's what I love. Like I love doing interviews as well, not just giving interviews, but like getting interviews from people. It just everyone's got a story. It's like what story is it that you tell yourself that holds yourself back sometimes? Or, you know, what story are you telling yourself that you're fearful of to move forward? It's just there's just so much about people. And I want to be able to let other people understand that telling your story is scary, but once you continue to tell it, somebody will be like, oh, that happened to me too, or I'm relatable to you. And that brings back to the representation.
Yes, and especially within your community, like that reputation of a strong woman who's outspoken, who goes for what she wants and just like takes up that space of I'm here. I'm not
Mm.
going to be shrinking down for you. And the fact that you are recognizing this as an adult woman, because many people seem to think that once you hit a certain age, you can never change, but that's not true. It's all about the mindset. If you want to change, if you want to do better, if you want to experience something new, it doesn't matter how old you are. It just depends on how you shape your mind and if you actively want to do it, and also surround yourself with the people who encourage you to be that person that you want to be. So by you setting this example, not only for women, but for Asian women and everyone around you, you are allowing so many different facets of people to follow your example for paving that way of like, you know what, I can do it. And I'm X, Y, and Z years old, and I'm from this background, and I'm a woman. You can
Mm-hmm.
do it too. And that's beautiful. It's very, very beautiful, especially in today's society where people are becoming more and more separate, more and more isolated and put into different groups. This is providing that beacon of light to help bring more people together. And that's just absolutely amazing and so respectable, and really admire you. And you don't, I won't say you do not look your age, but that just goes to show once you start loving yourself, taking care of yourself, doing stuff you love, age is nothing but a number.
Age is exact. I'm like I said, I'm 46 years old. 46. I started strength training in powerlifting at 29 in 2019. In 2019. And I I hold a record right now in a federation for doing a deadlift at my age group at 402 pounds. And the funny thing is I had more in me, but 4 and 2 is my last attempt. Anyway, but as I transitioned into doing strongman competitions, I never thought I would be considered an athlete. And that's something that I always had in the back of my mind as a young kid. Like, I want to be an athlete. I want to play sports. And to be able to experience competition. And it's funny because I was talking to my husband about this. Like, there was a time, yeah, I am an athletic trainer by education. And as an athletic trainer, we're on the sidelines. We root for our athletes. We root for our teams to do well. And now I actually have to train my mindset right now to cheer for myself. It's great to support other women. It's great to support other people. There is a time now where I need to cheer for myself as well. And I never thought about that. And we have to cheer our own selves on. And that is part of that culture for me, to not be number one. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm always number two, supporting the family, supporting my husband, supporting all that. But now I'm number one. I put myself number one. I'm still going to support others, but I want to win.
Yes.
I want to win. No holds barred. You know, there's nothing holding me back from not supporting myself. Mm-hmm. But that mindset took me years to build. And now I'm building a second mindset of, I want to win.
Yes.
I'm here. I'm going to, woo, go you. But when I'm up there competing, it's going to be, go Laarni. Here we go, Laarni. You got this shit. You know, like that kind of conversation in myself. I've never done that. So now it's 46 years old, building a brand new competitive mindset.
Yes, girl, you do that. I see you be building stuff. And you build people, and you lift things and you put it down, and you're just strengthening everything. But that's absolutely fabulous. And as we transition to our next segment, since we got all that motivational and inspiring backstory, let's transition into how that builds you in your professional life and what you do, so we can go more in depth. So we'll be back in just a moment. And we're back. Oh, guys, man, that first segment was very, very gem dropping. That's probably not the correct way of saying that, but my coffee is wearing off, so we're going to accept that as proper English for now. But now that we know more about where Laarni has come from, how she built herself into who she is today, and what led her to this point, let's go into more about her professional life and what she does. We heard bits and pieces, but now let's directly go into that. So we mentioned in the intro way back when that there was something called the Standing in Strength Global Movement. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So in 2020, I did my first summit. So as my sister would say, I was the busiest unemployed person ever, because in 2020, with COVID popping off and everything, I'd lost my job. And instead of sitting back waiting for things to happen, I decided it was time for me to make things happen for myself. And like I said, 2019 was the first time I started strength training and competing. That competitive edge that started in 2019 carried over in 2020, even though my gym was closed, even though I had lost my job, even though I had no idea what I was going to do with my life at that time, because I wanted to do something different. So in 2020, October 2020, I did a summit. It's called Standing in Strength, where there were a lot of people who would talk about how strength is part of their life, like how it became a community for me. And I met a lot of other people all over the place that brought into that community as well. And everyone's strength is different. Everyone's idea of strength is different, but they're all strong. But we're all strong. So that Standing in Strength Summit, not only was it to build positivity, build community, and build a self-belief in everybody, that Standing in Strength, I realized I couldn't do it by myself. Like, strength isn't singular 100% of the time. You really have to surround yourself with the people you want to be a part of. The outlook that they have, the energy they have. And I decided I wanted to speak about it. So that Standing in Strength Summit started happening. And I wrote a book called Standing in Strength, where I collaborated with 6 other women to talk about how movement and how movement got them through some hard times. What lessons did they learn through their own personal strength? So every co-author was able to share their perspective. And that is really like that Standing in Strength is a community that I started in 2020. It's kind of fallen off a little bit, but that's okay. But it's really that, for me, that idea that strength is universal, that standing in strength, you stand in your strength, everybody stands in their strength to build a community for themselves or be a part of. And that's what the Standing in Strength movement is about.
And did the Standing in Strength movement, did that come as a result of your brand of Strong and Mighty, or was that the inspiration for you to start that brand of Strong and Mighty? Can you tell us more about that?
It was my inspiration to start Strong and Mighty. Strong and Mighty was always there. It didn't come into fruition until the idea, because I didn't want to launch anything that didn't have a backing, didn't have a purpose behind it. Has the purpose evolved a little bit? Yes. But in general, it is positivity, community, confidence. Like, those 3 things are the structure of the Standing in Strength movement, and also as part of the Strong and Mighty company. Like, I'm not here to tack on more the negative energy that's already out there. It's hard enough to think positively about yourself. It's super easy to go into your negative mindset, but let's go on the positive side. It's so hard to think positively. So that is the community I want to continue to build.
And what are some of the highlights, like, so because you've been utilizing Strong and Mighty for at least a couple years now, like, what has been the highlights of beginning this journey of helping others reach their biggest potential, and what has been I can't English today, you know what I mean, what has been the biggest challenges, and how did you overcome that to help your clients in building that community you mentioned earlier?
So I'll tell you the most impactful moment so far in my career. I was competing, and this is the competition that I held. I did the 402 deadlift. I was in the restroom, just wiping the chalk off me, whatever. I come out of the stall, and there's a little girl staring at me. A little girl. I want to assume she was Asian or Hispanic or something like that, but she was just a little girl. And she looked up at me, and she was like, "You are so strong." And she watched me through the whole competition. And that was a big highlight for me, because that's who I want to see little girls, you know, see that representation of someone, see someone doing, wow, like I can do, maybe if I, when I grow up, I can do something like that. But I also was kind to her, as kind to her family. And I want that little girl to remember that girl that we went to that competition and she did like that, you know. I want to be able to have that kind of impact on people, not just young women, young girls, but just people in general. You know, when you leave my space, I want you to take a piece of my strength with you. And that is like some of the talks that I've done, you know, I say I share my strength with you because I do. I have a lot of strength that I've built over the years and I want to share it with everyone. So that to me is an impactful moment in my life where I could share it with that little girl. Now, there's always challenges. There's always like challenges right now is like I've stepped back off like my Standing in Strength social media page because I wanted to get back to who I was and not having to do something for other people. And I want to do it for me because if I'm doing it for somebody else, to me, that's not authentic. You're not authentically feeling who you are. You're not authentically believing in who you are because you just want to do it just to do it for other people. And I took a step back from the whole social media posting. You know, I used to do a daily strength post and I got to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I got to do this at 9 o'clock every day. Blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't feeling it. So I think in 2023, I am going to get back into that. But that is a challenge a challenge now as well is I question myself. Am I doing it for me or am I doing it for other people? Am I doing it just to be an influencer or am I doing it to be an impactor? You know, and I just don't. Influence is great. Influence, you know, you want to be be an influence to other people, great. But what kind of impact am I giving this little girl? You know, what kind of piece of the story? She may not remember who I am in like the next few years, but she'll be like, that one girl. And that's where I see the challenge now is I don't want to be doing things just to do them. You know, I did that for most of my life. I was going through the motions. I want to do things because I know that there is going to be a conversation after we're done. You know, when you leave my space, when you leave one of my talks, you are taking some of those nuggets, those tools, and taking it with you and you utilizing them and then passing them on. One talk during the Standing in Strength Summit, I called it my positivity forest because we are planting a seed of positivity everywhere we go to build a positivity forest because a lot of negativity is around now. Let's overcome that negativity by planting all this positivity all over the place.
Love that so much. And my heart just like swelled 10 times the size hearing about that little girl. Like you made a significant difference in her life and giving her that permission to be herself and to show that women too can be strong.
Yeah. Like you give these little girls the, you know, the image of princesses and pink and all that stuff when really let's give them reality a little bit, you know, the opportunities that they can step into. Let's give them all sorts of colors. Let them choose, you know, like all that. I just feel like that is part of who I like. Let's give that opportunity. Let's give that light to so many people because we got to take our blinders off. There's too many things out there.
Yes. And so that leads me to the final question of this segment is, where do you see Strong and Mighty going? What's the dream? What's the ultimate goal for Strong and Mighty for the next couple of years?
Whew, lots of dreams. Lots of dreams. I want to get back on. I really want to get on a stage, like a big stage. You know, I've dreamt, like literally have dreamt, seeing myself on a stage with a lot of people listening to me talk. I have dreamt of being on a Times Square billboard. I have. It's actually one of my number one things I want to fulfill in my life is to be on a billboard in Times Square. But really, I mean, it's the dream of building my community of these women who don't believe in, I shouldn't say don't believe in themselves. They believe in themselves, but like they just need a little nudge. Like they need the strength nudge to believe in themselves at a different level. That makes me happy. When I see women clapping for themselves, it's amazing. Like it makes me feel that I have that impact on the women who stand in the corner the whole time watching everybody else. You know, let's clap for you. I'm going to clap for you. But if we're competing, I will clap for you, but I want to win.
I mean, fair.
You know, that's how it is. And the big picture is to have that reach, that strength reach, that we are so capable of doing a lot of things. I have, it's called I Built Her, and the HER stands for have every right. We have every right to live the way we want to. We have every right to build ourselves. We have every right to ask for what we want professionally, relationshiply. You know, like, I mean, the strength has transferred even into my professional life as an athletic trainer. That I'm not afraid to ask for things, not demand. I ask for things demandingly in a nice way. But to me, it's true. You have every right as a woman, as someone who, for me, as an Asian woman, I have every right to build the life that I want. I have every right to see myself at a different level professionally, but I also have every right to turn down things that don't feel right for me. And it took a long time to be comfortable to do that, because as an Asian woman, you're supposed to either say yes to everything, you know, yes, 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 I will cook your dinner. Yes, I will cook, I will clean. Yes, I will be your subservient woman, you know, like something like that. And, you know, now the yeses are different. Yes, I want that promotion. Yes, I want a bigger salary. Yes, I want that corner office. Yes, I want to mentor the women that don't feel like they have support. That's where my yeses are now. It's a totally different switch. So eventually, you know, the strength is universal impact, the standing and strength series, I want it to come back bigger. Bigger, so we can take up the room, you know. So that's where I see myself in the next maybe like 5 to 8 years.
Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing how big this grows, and y'all better keep an eye on her and watch and see how this, like how many lives that she's going to impact with us. And with that said, before we sign off, are there any last minute tips or advice that you would like to give to our young women that are like listening or watching this on our YouTube channel?
Sure. So part of the Tools of Strength, I wrote a program a long time ago. It's called the Tools of Strength, that gets you through some doubts. Where, like, where do you see yourself in like the future or even the next minute or so? So it's almost like the three, what are you grateful for? The three things that you're grateful for. So like, what are the three stories you tell yourself? I feel like everyone's got that story they tell themselves all the time, that they either can't do something, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So write down your three stories that you tell yourself. Okay. You have your three stories that you tell yourself. Now the next part of it, right next to those three stories, what can you change within those three stories? What can you tell yourself differently about those three stories? What did you learn from that's one story? What did you learn? And then right after that, where is your future that you see yourself in that story? Are you part of that story still? Is it a change in your mindset after? It's almost like facing your story, because I really believe in the story you tell yourself is a story that's going to come out. And sometimes that story can be that negative story, and it'll continue to come out because you're telling yourself the same story. Change your story. Maybe one word. Instead of I should, it could be I will. And instead of saying I'm going to do this tomorrow, what if you did that today? It's really like that story that you tell yourself can really change the direction of where you're going almost instantly, if you think about it. So those are the exercises. If you're not going to hurt yourself, if you're not going to hurt somebody else, but your trajectory, if you have a goal, that trajectory, what stories are you putting in that trajectory? And are you doing it for yourself? Can't be doing it for other people. Because if you do it for other people, you're going to be living their expectations. You're going to be living their standards. And one of my ideas of greatness is outperform and outgrow other people's expectations and standards that were put upon you. That's how I started living my life since 2019. And the strength aspect, the strength training just helped push me forward in that sense.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. And I'm sure those listening really appreciate you as well. So thank you so much for sharing your stories, sharing your passion, sharing all of your thoughts about everything that we talked about today. And I'm sure our audience will love to follow your journey. So where would they be able to find you?
Sure. You can find me on laarnimulvey.com, and you can see some of my stories. You can see some of the podcasts I've been on as well. You can order the 2 books that I have been in. The first book is the Standing in Strength series that is available on Amazon, but also I was a co-contributor to The Potent Power of Menopause. That's another book that's another story that I can go on and talk about, is the whole menopause thing. But I digress. So those are the things. You can find me there, but you can find me on Laarni Mulvey on Instagram. That's really where I'm mostly active. Get some inspiration on my training. You can see my failures. You can see some of my successes, but I don't hide too much of the failures, because that's all part of life and part of the journey. So, you have to go through those things sometimes to get us to the next level.
Yes. So y'all heard it here. Go and stalk this woman nicely, politely, by just following the great things that she does, not literally. Because you're definitely going to get inspired and you want to start lifting. Because I'm like, man, after this, let me go and try and lift a gallon of water or something. I don't know.
I'll tell you, when somebody comes into my messenger and says, you know, I never thought that I could lift like this, and they're, oh, I can't lift like you, and I'm just like, that's okay. You started, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I love that. I love getting that kind of feedback where a woman who's never lifted before is like, you know, I was watching your videos and things like that, and I don't think I could lift like you, but I tried it and I like it. That to me is beautiful. That to me is like, if you need some support, message me. If you need some motivation, message me. If you need a little butt kick, message me. I'm here for you. Again, I will clap for you, but you have to learn how to clap for yourself as well.
100%. So y'all follow this woman, follow her journey, and if you feel able, give it a shot and just take your chance on yourself. Like, you're worth it, and that's like, you're seen, you're heard, you're valuable, you're enough.
You matter.
Again, you matter. Yes.
To me, I that is a big for me. Like, you know, going to talk to some of these women who never thought they mattered, and they actually hear like they do matter, even if we have a language barrier. I'm like, you matter to me as a person, as a human being.
Yes.
So, sorry.
No, that's fine. Like, people can hear your passion and authenticity for this. And that's why I love hearing that passion in your voice. And it's just so real, not like a scripted, hey, this is what you gotta do. This is follow me because I'm business this. It's like, no, you are speaking candidly, you're speaking openly, and you're sharing that passion and love that you have for other women and other women of color, just everyone in your vicinity, just people in general even. So it's absolutely wonderful. And again, we really, really appreciate you coming on today. And we would love to have you back to talk about menopause. I'm not up there yet, but I heard some stories. So it'll be nice for our ladies who are going through that to hear the story. But for y'all listening, you got my y'all coming out. For those of you listening, thank you so much for giving us your time, lending us your ear, and just listening to Laarni's story and the advice that she has to give. And we just really appreciate having you for today's episode of the Melanin Muses Podcast. To hear more, please ensure that you subscribe and follow our podcast wherever you listen to us. And we would be absolutely grateful and love if you give us a rating and a review to ensure that we can continue bringing you valuable content. And we just love hearing from you. And also share this episode with someone that you care about who needs that extra kick in the butt and reminder that they matter. And lastly, please be sure to check us out on our Instagram at Melanin Muses Podcast, as well as our official YouTube channel for more content, and also to see our beautiful faces, because why not? So on that note, this is Nikki signing off. We'll see you next week. And we have...
And Laarni Mulvey, the power lady, here saying happy 2023, right? Let's get
Happy
it started.
New Year, guys. Let's give into our strength this year.
That's right. Woohoo!